I'm not sure if you've noticed, but if you're not muted, we can hear everyone's background noise. If you have any questions throughout the webinars, just type them in the chat section and we will cover them at the very end of the Q&A session. If you come across any technical issues, please send me a direct message, and I am TRCA host within the chat section. So let's begin. On behalf of Partners in Project Green, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. Partners in Project Green is a growing community of businesses working together to green their bottom line by creating an internationally recognized eco-business zone around Toronto Pearson, known for its competitive, high-performance, and eco-friendly climate. So through these regular webinars that we host, we hope to bring the latest technologies, programs, and tools to the comfort of your office, while providing a format to ask questions that will help you discover the right solutions for your operations. So if you have any information or have any interest in our programs or events, you can always visit us at www.partnersinprojectgreen.com. So this afternoon we're exploring the very interesting topic of internal waste audits. We're very fortunate to have speakers from Working Knowledge and Robert Bosch to give you the ins and outs of completing an effective waste audit. So let's begin. First up we have Malaz Sabai, who is the project manager for waste management at Partners in Project Green, and he's going to give you a bit of context for this webinar. Here you go.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you to everyone for their patience. What we do at Partners in Project Green is we support businesses and organizations who have waste challenges and are looking for solutions. And we'll get into our programming a little later on into the presentation, but what I wanted to share with everybody was what we refer to as the data dilemma. Essentially, to divert materials, you have your materials on site and you need someone to take those materials off of you, and there's answers that those people, those off-takers of your materials, they need answers to 4 basic questions. With these 4 questions, it's usually the case that this is the information that people need to help divert your materials. So the questions such as what is it? What is your material? What's the composition? How much? Looking at volume and quantity. How often? The frequency is how often has the waste been being generated? How often does it need to be collected? And lastly, what are you doing with it now? Understanding your current disposal method is key to providing a new solution. What we found time and time again working with many businesses, surprisingly, is waste is a challenging topic, and quite often that information is just not available. And without having access to that information, it was very difficult for us to assist businesses and other organizations with finding solutions to their challenges. So realizing that we needed to help companies with their data, but being able to better understand their waste so they can find better solutions to solve their challenges, we teamed up with Bosch and Working Knowledge. Bosch was interested in better understanding their waste, and they were planning on doing an internal waste audit. So we teamed up with Jessica Wilkinson of Working Knowledge, Inc., who's a professional waste auditor. And through that process, which you'll hear about today, what we're going to be doing is giving people the tools that they need to be able to answer these 4 basic questions and improve their diversion and waste management programs. I'll now pass it back to Alex, who will introduce our other speakers.
Great, thank you so much, Malaz. So I have the privilege of introducing Jessica Wilkinson, who's responsible for the strategic planning, finance, sales, marketing, operational, and personal decisions of Working Knowledge. She also coaches her project managers and clients to achieve their green goals. Jessica has worked with the Recycling Council of Ontario to develop and roll out their 3R certification program, and she can really strongly say that she has trained most of the current accredited waste auditors in Ontario. So I'm actually going to unmute you right now, Jessica, and we would be good to go. There we go.
Alex?
Yes, there we go.
There we are. Hi, Alex.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. How does that sound?
I can hear you perfectly.
As long as I don't go in the bright red, that means I'm too loud. Hoping you guys can see my mouse arrow moving around.
I do see it moving.
All right, good. That means that you are seeing my screen. So thanks for that introduction, folks. So I think I've got about 15 to 20 minutes to speak to you, which is amazing. because those of you who know me know I can do this for days. So I'll contain myself as best I can. So welcome everybody, and thanks for attending this. There's lots of interesting learnings from what we've done with Partners in Project Green and Bosch, and I'm looking forward to giving you some of these high-level things that we've discovered. So my part today, I want to talk to you a little bit about the background, some of the benefits of waste audits. One thing, we are going to be focusing on conducting waste audit internally. So, if I'm the generator of the waste, I'm conducting my own waste audit. And I, as a professional environmental auditor, I actually see a lot of benefit to conducting internal waste audits, and I will share that with you before we're done today. Talk about some high-level how-tos of waste auditing. And then a comparison between internal and external waste auditing. There are some nuances. There are times that you will want to call in some external expertise, and other times where it makes a lot of sense to have your own staff conduct the program. And then some outcomes. So again, I'm not going to sit here and toot my horn. I think, Alex, thank you for that. Just to let's see if there's anything else in here that I wanted to write. So Alex said that I am a professional waste auditor. I'm actually a professional environmental auditor. So I've been working in this field since the early 1990s. And what that, as an environmental auditor, I do a lot of compliance work. We conduct packaging audits, compliance audits, training programs. We will actually verify systems for people, so for organizations. So it is more than waste auditing, and the reason I wanted to say that is I think there are a lot of transferable skills here. And this will relate to those of you wanting to do internal audits, because you don't have to be a professional waste auditor to do a waste audit. But again, there are times where you're going to want to stack your team as best you can. So lots of transferable skills there for you folks. Not going to talk anymore about me. That's what I look like, so you can put a face to the voice. And we do have an active website now that I do invite you to check out, because we have news, blogs, all sorts of information that hopefully will be interesting and relevant to you. Before we begin, I'm going to put my training hat on, but I promise I'll keep it under control a little bit. There are some background terms, though, that I want everybody to be on the same page with. So we're not using too much jargon here. Audit and waste audit, I actually have slides just on those, so I'll skip those for a moment. IC and I, industrial, commercial, and institutional. That's what we're focusing on here. We're not looking at residential waste. We're not looking at municipal waste. Completely different skill set and different methodology for sampling that type of material. It's more of a, I'd say, end of pipe kind of audit, where an IC&I audit, which is what we're focusing on, is very much based on the process or the process. Waste reduction work plan. So your waste reduction work plans, these are your plans that for an organization to increase their diversion and their capture using the 3 R's hierarchy. In some provinces, or well, in Ontario in particular, this can be a regulatory requirement as well for certain waste generators. So when we talk about a work plan, that's usually what we're referring to. But remember, it has to take into account the 3 R's hierarchy. So it can't just be a recycling work plan. It has to address, are you going to reduce the material you're generating? How will you reuse it if you can? And then look at recycling as sort of your, I'd like to say, your last option. I don't even like to think about disposal if we can help it. Source separation, and I've gotten their brackets, programs. So, most of you are probably aware of, having different containers to sort your materials. I mean, this is, recycling is not new in 2014. This is now a way of life. I mean, the kids who are going to school have never known anything but blue boxes. So this is something we're fully aware of. What I have found that many folks are not aware of is what a source separation program really is. So a very high-level description. Your source separation program has to include communication, verification that materials will actually be recycled if as per the claims, and that your diversion claims can be verified. So it's not just the desk side bins, the labels, but the actual communication of the results and verifying what's happening with the material. And this last term that I will use a lot because it really is essential to your waste auditing methods, acceptance criteria. So I guess sort of our lay definition for acceptance criteria, these are your specifications that are set by, they're set by the haulers and the processors, but they also take into account the waste generators, okay, so the IC&I folks. And the acceptance criteria, these are based on logistical, technological capabilities, and markets. All of the different considerations that have to be considered, considerations being considered, that determine how your waste, recycling, reusable items should be staged, sorted, and so on. So the rules that you have to follow as a generator, including contamination thresholds, to ensure that the highest value can be made of your materials. So a very easy example. If you're generating paper towel waste from the washrooms, what can we do with this material? Can we put it in our recycling program with our other paper? Can we include it with our cardboard bales? Can it go in our organics program with our food waste? Even though I have millennia of experience, or maybe 20 years, I can't answer that question without speaking to the service providers, because I know that different processors can handle it and different ones cannot. And if I'm going to be making claims that my paper towel, for example, is actually being diverted, I need to verify that, because if I have a C-level executive in my organization who's signing off on my diversion rate in my CSR report, I want to make sure that this paper towel is actually being recycled. Now that was probably not a very impactful example. Is paper towel really a big deal? But it's a good example of how one material could have several different processing technologies. So we would need to know the acceptance criteria for it. All right, let's look at what is an audit. So I didn't invent this definition. This is an internationally recognized definition, which I'm not going to read to you. But what I want you to think of is, what elements do we need to have in order to have something really be an audit? So it has to be systematic. It has to be independent. So I can't audit myself, but how does that apply to an internal audit? I'll make sure we cover that. It has to be documented. There has to be a process. And all of this is to obtain evidence, audit evidence, to objectively evaluate whether or not the criteria have been met. So if all of these elements are in there, we have an audit. Now, how does this relate to a waste audit? I think the big difference is a waste audit doesn't always have clear, reproducible criteria. You can call it an assessment, but we do tend to call these things waste audits. Okay, so your waste audit is a study that relates to solid, non-hazardous waste. Does that mean I can include liquid waste? If you decide that it's in the scope and it's something that's important to you, yes, you can include hazardous or liquid waste or anything along those lines. But we're focusing on solid, non-hazardous waste audits, and this is typically what you'll see in industry. When folks talk about doing a waste audit, they're pretty much talking about, what garbage are you generating? What waste is being generated? What recyclables, reusable items, and so on. A waste audit has to address the amount, the type or nature, and composition of the waste. So this is where we get into measuring and sorting, and this is where we really get dirty, essentially. But there are also qualitative requirements aside from the quantity. So we need to investigate, how is waste being generated? Why is it being generated at a facility? We have to look at policies, decisions, and other elements that are included in solid waste management. And again, we do this through measurements and observations. So my big takeaway for everybody here is a waste audit is not just a dumpster dive, but it's not entirely qualitative either. We need measurements to be taken, but the process for waste generation has to be studied as well. All solid waste that's generated regularly must be accounted for, and this includes materials that are being reused, recycled, and disposed. So all of those elements, the qualitative, the quantitative, the observations, and measurements, they all have to be included in order for this to be a true waste audit. And why? Well, you can't manage what you don't measure, and this is all about managing. So benefits. Why do we care how much and what is in our waste stream? Like, what does that really matter? Well, lots and lots of benefits, and some of these I'll just leave up there, and some of them I will speak to because we may be getting head scratchers wondering what does this mean. So benchmarking, you know, data. This is really what we're all about these days, isn't it? Monitoring and measurement, setting goals. Well, you know, if you don't have solid benchmarks and data, you won't know whether or not A, your program is on track. B, is it going off the rails? Are we trending into a place where we won't be conforming? And you know, how well are we actually achieving these things if we're going to report back, either through our source separation program, through our reports to stakeholders, or even our own internal stakeholders, you know, folks that actually care about what we're doing with this. Definitely improved environmental performance. So those of you who are who have an environmental management system, you know that the purpose of your environmental management system is to improve your environmental performance. Waste is a really big part of that, and my experience has been that you know, there are different environmental aspects that an organization can have. It doesn't matter if you're a manufacturer, an office building, restaurant, you are interacting with the environment somehow. So you know, we have a pretty good handle. I'm not saying we want to disregard these things, but we've got a good handle on energy and water because we have invoices, we have tracking, we have, you know, some very significant savings that can be achieved. But how are we going to actually, you know, track and compare our waste? This is why we do a waste audit. There's an educational component as well, and I mean at every level. With education. We'll talk about that a bit more later. Improved eco-efficiency, absolutely. You know, everything from the low-lying fruit, and I'm going to give you an example on this one shortly, to tightening up programs, becoming more efficient, identifying wastes that could actually be a commodity, but we don't know, if we don't know how much we're generating, we can't even go out to the market and say, you know, hey, I've got this really interesting resin. You know, we can remove all the contamination. What's it worth? Can we put it back into our system, or is there a market there for this material? So let's really rethink what is and what isn't waste. It'll help you procure and manage your services effectively. So the first thing that I think of when we talk about this is you know, our waste haulers, our service providers. We want to make sure we're making the best use of our dock space, that we have the right service provider for the right waste streams, and that, of course, we're getting what we're paying for as well. And the example I always like to give is, you know, my organic material. In many places, it costs more to recycle my organics than it does to put it to landfill, depending on where you're located and what your processor's requirements are. And yet, we know that it's just a standard practice nowadays for organizations to separate their organic material. Who knows where we're going with this, but if I'm paying a premium for a certain waste stream, I do want to make sure that I am getting what I'm paying for. So that's a part of it as well, the waste audit. There's a due diligence aspect to this, and regulatory compliance as well for large generators in Ontario. There's a requirement that they conduct waste audits and do waste reduction, put together waste reduction programs. But there are more and more organizations who aren't captured by the regulation who still see a lot of benefit in conducting waste audits. I mean, look at the list. There's so much. Some of it comes down to your corporate social responsibility reporting. So, I mean, some of these reports are being shared at an international level. There's a high level of accountability here, even in waste. Because waste is high profile, it's high optics, it's something that when I look at green teams, you know, you may have a water green team or an energy green team, but the waste green team seems to be the one that fills up because people understand it, they see it, and they know it's something that they can actually have an effect. As far as accountability is concerned, again, a lot of it comes down to, you know, if we make a claim that our diversion rate is a certain number, we have to be able to back that up. Not only that, but let's say I have a diversion rate of, you know, 60%, and perhaps I want to set some sort of zero waste goal. I won't know whether or not that goal is actually achievable if I don't do a waste audit and see, what opportunities are we missing? What materials should I be recycling and I'm not? Or even worse, if I could say this, what materials do I have a program for that are still being missed and still going out for disposal? So that's something else we can find. It helps you set your goals. Can't really put together a work plan without doing a waste audit, at least not an effective one. It does help morale too. And I don't just mean, that great feeling you have for working for an organization that does the right thing in alignment with your own feelings and principles, but paying attention to waste, paying attention to people's workspaces, working with cleaners, working with maintenance people, working with, on the shop floor, it actually improves morale a lot because it shows that this work is actually important and that somebody cares. We're measuring it. Of course it matters. And then the one that I really like is we can achieve recognition for all of these efforts at the end of the day. So, once we start having improvements, why not go out there and see if a third party will recognize us for this? And there are lots of organizations who want to verify your programs and give you these recognitions.
Sorry to interrupt there, Jessica. I just wanted to, and just looking at the time, if we can, I believe we're at 15 minutes right now, so or 20. Is it possible if you could cover in the next, because I know you have really great content in the next few slides, if you can cover them in 5 to 7 minutes?
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Okay.
So the high-level example I wanted to give is, how do we translate this into actual dollars? So, there's one waste audit, and I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of this, but that we conducted at a manufacturing facility. And we always have unpredictable waste streams at manufacturers, but they're very, very interesting. Actually, all waste audits are like that. So through our waste audit, and we did a departmental audit, so all of the bags were labeled, we knew where the materials were coming from, we found pretty much in every bag reusable Kevlar gloves, which are quite expensive. So bottom line, we were able to help this organization repeatedly save about $40,000 per year just in gloves alone. I mean, these things are very expensive. That doesn't include the fact that they were actually paying to dispose of these items. So, they were basically throwing out a reusable commodity. So they were able to put in a reuse program. They knew where to put it because they did the waste audit, and they were able to achieve those savings year after year. So it was very nice to go to them with that and say, hey, your waste audit paid for itself many times over. Okay, so the how to conduct a waste audit. So again, I'm going to keep it high level. Right, so as far as standardized methods, we do have standardized methods for municipal waste. There are standardized methods, through the Recycling Council of Ontario, for example, that have been developed in recent years. But there's nothing out there that has been around for decades. So a lot of this really is still a work in progress. The key is to make sure you know what method you're going to use, document it, use the same language, and make sure you're using the same methods year over year so you can actually compare your results. Other things that go into this, planning is I would say, the biggest deal, and I think that you'll hear that from Bosch as well. And then what do you do? After you've done your planning, you've got all of this ready to go. I'm missing a slide. There it is. No, that's the same one. How to conduct a waste audit. Okay, I'm a little thrown off by my limit here. Sorry. Okay, so the planning. When we look at where are we going to conduct the sort, how do we make sure we get all of the materials that are being generated? Are we going to look at things at a departmental level, that type of thing? We've already mentioned the qualitative side, but taking observations, looking at why waste is being generated. What are the rules surrounding this? What do we not want to see in the waste? Determining the acceptance criteria, which I'll get into again in one moment, taking into account safety, hygiene, confidentiality requirements, reviewing records. So are we relying on any records from haulers? And if so, these need to be verified. Okay, we can't just take a summary, but can we actually match up spreadsheets with waybills and verify that these claims are actually true? And then what? After we've actually gotten down and dirty and conducted our sorting. Well, I mean, obviously reporting is a big deal, but it doesn't need to be a big comprehensive report, especially for an internal audit. I think, if I'm going to flip back for 1 second here, in our planning phase, one of the things we would look at would be determining the objective. The objective is, what is it that you want to learn from the audit? Well, the report is the conclusion, which determines, we compare it to the audit objective. How well did we achieve this, whatever objective was for the audit? Communicate the results. It helps inform our decisions. We can set a review, our objectives and targets, and make improvements. Okay, so in order to determine whether we want to do our waste audits internally or externally, we need to look at, what are the qualities of a waste auditor? Is this a resource that we have on staff? Will we need to put together a team with some outside expertise? How do we make sure we're getting the right mix here? So I like to think of expertise and credentials. Expertise, you're going to want some technical knowledge with this person, somebody who has an idea of things like, what can be recycled, what are certain resins, that type of thing. They have to be comfortable with arithmetic and possibly using Excel spreadsheets as well, because there's definitely some number crunching here. They have to be analytical and I'd say be able to question. So if there does seem to be a certain waste stream that's higher than normal, A, they can identify that seems odd, and B, they can help get to the bottom as to why this material is there. And they have to be able to communicate. And I'd like to say, we talk about the soft skills in a moment, but the communication is written, but it's also being able to work with people as well. I mean, communication is a big part of the planning. If we don't communicate the requirements for the audit, it can't be a one-person project. You really do need other folks buy-in. You need them on board. As far as soft skills are concerned, it helps if they're personable, because then more people will want to help you. Being assertive, absolutely. Being assertive to get the answers that you want. Assertive doesn't mean aggressive. It just means that you're able to speak up. Ethical is a big one. We want to make sure the audit is a true audit, that there are no predetermined opinions, that people stay unbiased, and that they're not auditing something that should be independent. They need to be well organized, because wow, is there ever a lot of information that will be gathered through the process. Determined, because sometimes it can be a little bit daunting. You have to be able to keep going and get to the bottom. Diligent, absolutely, and I'm talking about diligence for everything from making sure we're not cutting corners while we take measurements, to protecting ourselves, protecting other workers, wearing safety glasses, gloves, so on and so forth, carefully calibrating scales and making sure that all steps are being followed, and being resilient. And as far as resilient, I like to think, well, not being afraid to get dirty, because that's definitely a part of it. Okay, I don't know where that went. There we are. I'm glad to know I'm not the only one with technical issues today.
I know. I guess it's a day today. Oh my goodness.
Well,
okay.
I think this is my second last slide, so I can zip through it real quick, because I think this is really what a lot of people wanted to hear.
Yeah.
So for making a decision about an internal versus an external auditor, because there are a lot of external auditors out there who are doing this as a career now, these are the things that you need to consider. So consider, what resources do you have? What financial resources? That's usually the go-to, first of all. How much do I want to put into this project? How much have I budgeted for? That's usually a good place to start. But what do I have insofar as human resources as well? Because a waste audit usually takes more than one person. And if everybody in our organization has already got 3 jobs to do, it might be very difficult to do the waste audit as well. Or you may be able to work with co-op students. You may have folks who are just very, very keen and want to be part of your green team. So you might actually have lots of human resources. expertise is an issue. A moment ago we talked about what sort of credentials and skills we want people to have. I'll speak to that a little bit more. And time. Wow. So you may have the human resources, but you just may not have the time to conduct the waste audit. Understand that sometimes an internal waste audit will take longer because people have other jobs they're doing at the same time. So they can't necessarily devote an entire week to the project. They may have to carry it out over 4 to 6 weeks and do a little bit each day. Because remember, it's not just the dumpster dive. We're looking at management decisions, policies, and so on. Credentials, knowledge, and experience of the audit team. This may be something that you have on staff and it may not. And credentials are an interesting one. So I think that Alex had mentioned something. I do want to make a correction that I have trained the accredited waste auditors in Ontario. There actually aren't any accredited waste auditors in Ontario. I guess as far as accreditation is concerned, we do have there are folks who've been trained by independent third parties like RCO, or perhaps they've taken ISO 14001 training somewhere, but nobody has actually been accredited as a waste auditor as of yet. That's not something that happens, not yet anyway. But as far as credentials are concerned, let's see, what sort of technical knowledge do you want your auditor to have? Because that's really up to you folks to decide. What knowledge, what sort of experience levels do they have? And why would I care? Because they would know markets, they would know, be comfortable with different waste categories, acceptance criteria, and they can share best practices. I mean, there's a lot to be had there. And you can get that internally or externally. And then what are the objectives for your audit? How important are the results? If it's something that's going to be externally communicated, it may be a requirement that you actually use an external auditor. And the last point that I have to make on this is the independence of the auditor. Again, if it's external verification, you want to make sure that your auditor doesn't have a stake in the game, that they have nothing to gain on, as far as the results are concerned. We can't have any predetermined opinions or any bias when it comes to an audit, or it's not really an audit. There may still be benefit to it, but if it's going to be an audit with external claims being made, we need to make sure that the auditor is as independent as possible. You can achieve that internally, but you'll probably need a team. You can also have problems externally if you are using an auditor who is too, let's say, has too much to gain from the results of the audit. So there's that to consider, ethics and confidentiality. All right, I don't know why it's doing this, folks. I'm very sorry about that. But what I've done is I've given you sort of the shortest version I can based on our delays and so on. And this is the end of what I have to say. I'm staying on to answer questions as well because I did skip a lot of stuff. But
yes,
but that's what, yeah. So feel free to
Perfect.
contact us. And thank you very much, everybody.
No, thank you, Jessica, for coming on board. And like Jessica had said, she will be staying on for the Q&A at the very end. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat section so we can promptly cover those at the very end. So I just wanted to let you know we did start at about 10 minutes late. So there's a lot to cover, and I want you to get the full value of the content that we're delivering. So we are probably going to be staying about 10 minutes afterwards, and I hope that's okay with your schedule. Up next, we have Bosch we have actually Jim Papadopoulos from Bosch coming on board to speak to his experience here. And just if you could excuse me 1 second, I'm multitasking. There we go. And so Jim is the Manager of Facilities, Health and Safety, Environment, and Office Services at Bosch. He's the principal champion behind Bosch's commitment to reach 98% diversion from landfill at Bosch's Mississauga Distribution Center and organized Bosch's first ever internal waste audit in Canada. He's here with us today this afternoon in North York, Ontario, to talk about his experience of recently completing an internal waste audit. There you go.
Thank you, Alex. I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us. We're going to be talking trash a little bit today with Cody Deleuze and I from Bosch. Just to go a little bit over Bosch, Robert Bosch established his company over 125 years ago, and it's a worldwide organization. And it has many different divisions: power tools, automotive, security systems, appliances, thermal technology, and healthcare products, just to name a few. And basically, Mr. Bosch believed in social responsibility, and environmental protection is one of the basic corporate principles. We have 3 pillars for environmental protection: compliance with the law, continuous improvement, and pollution prevention. While we already comply with the law, our dedication to waste reduction is reflective of our drive for constant improvement and a commitment to go above and beyond what the law requires. Moreover, for the sustainability and protection of people and the environment. Bosch was a leader in social responsibility, and we feel that it's our duty to follow in his footsteps. Bosch's vision is to preserve the natural resources on which life depends on for today and future generations. Bosch's mission is to reduce the impact upon the environment and generate profitable growth, to have its associates act environmentally responsible, and to actively improve the environmental conditions. With that in mind, our head office and distribution center for Canada have decided to go for a diversion rate of 98% of waste from landfills. Knowing what is in our waste is the first step towards reaching this goal. So our waste audit objectives were to gain an in-depth understanding of the sources of our waste and analyze the data to determine the areas that need improvement. Less money on transport fees. If less tips are needed, recycling is less expensive than incineration in landfill. Waste is a commodity, and we can receive rebates on paper, fibers, plastics, metals, and wood, and it's moral and responsible. We also wanted to educate and engage our employees. If our employees know more about what goes in the waste and how much we produce, then we can make recommendations to help us strive for improvement. Cody will go a little bit more in depth in terms of the waste stream composition.
Hello. So this is what we knew before our waste audit. This is data that we got from our waste service provider. As you can see, 37.41% is landfilled, and we had no idea what made that up beforehand. That's another reason why we did a waste audit. So the first thing we did was we had a lunch and learn to educate and engage our employees. We offered a pizza lunch to promote and present to promote the presentation, and we coordinated with managers to ensure that everybody could attend. We invited Malaz, Jamie, and Jessica to come and speak about conducting a waste audit. Overall, our employees were engaged, and it was overall a success. So the first thing we did, obviously, is plan our audit. It was a lot of work. We had to figure out when and where we could do it, coordinating between a lot of people, including auditors, warehouse managers, and our custodial staff. We asked the custodial staff to place clear plastic bags in waste bins so that when we actually did the audit, our waste bags were easy to look at. We also asked them to label where each bag came from. That made it a point of generation audit, which enabled us to better understand what goes into waste and where that waste comes from. And we decided on a sampling time of 1 day to minimize the impact on daily business activities. So we created a list of our expected waste streams, and this list is only what we expected. It's not what we saw. A lot of the stuff you see here we did not find, and there's a lot of stuff that we did find that was not in our expected list. So the tools that we had, there's not much that we needed to use. We had gloves, tongs, safety glasses, and steel-toed shoes, as well as aprons, scales and bins provided by Jessica from Working Knowledge. That's all the tools we needed, not that much equipment that you need to get organized. The work area we had was a corner of our warehouse that was coned off. It was ideal because there's low traffic there, and it was right next to our waste container, so it was easy to throw away the waste when we were done with it. So for the actual bag sort portion of the audit, the first step was to match up our bags and count how many bags we had from each location. As you can see, that's our labels that we printed and gave to our custodial staff. We weighed and recorded the total weight of the bag, and then we opened up each bag and sorted it into blue bins. Those blue bins, which Jessica also brought, were equally weighted so that it was easy to zero the scale after each weighing. We took individual weights of the waste streams. For our smaller items, we used just a kitchen scale. And our data collection sheets were organized by waste stream and location. Space was left for notes, which was really important. And there's space for other, as you can see at the top there, for all the waste streams that we did not expect, such as label backing. The audit that we did was a green audit, meaning all of the recyclables that we sorted out in the end got recycled. So these are some quick observations that we had from the day of the audit. There was a lot of textile gloves that could be reused in the warehouse waste. Significant amount of plastic end caps that were in pristine condition found in the warehouse waste. There's got to be a way to reuse them. There was a lot of yogurt containers, maybe even enough to have a separate yogurt container recycling program. People are not recycling their paper coffee cups, and there's a huge amount of non-recyclable wax label backs in our warehouse waste. Another thing we did the day of the audit was take a quick look at our waste program. This is an assessment of our bins and signage. The first photo there shows office recycling, paper recycling, and garbage bin under everybody's desk. The center there, you can see it's labeled for plastic, cardboard, and paper, but there's only one bin there for two separate streams. So there is some problems with people moving bins and not moving the labels. That's something we need to investigate. The last photo there is our cardboard recycling. As you can see, it's overflowing. There's a lot of cardboard there. Maybe it's not being emptied often enough. And there's non-cardboard items there, a large plastic tray. We don't have a program in place for people to get rid of large items like their chairs or plastic trays if they're broken. So that's another thing we need to look into to make sure that gets taken care of. So this is, again, the same graph as before, our waste stream composition before the audit. What we looked at, it was just this red area here. So the landfill and the office recyclables. All this blue stuff was from our warehouse recycling program that we didn't get a chance to audit. So what you're looking at here is our breakdown of all the waste in the facility. Everything in blue is recyclable in our current programs. Anything in green is something that could go into a green text, like coffee grinds and soiled paper towel can go into a organics program if we see fit. So here's our definitions. Jessica mentioned that, for example, soiled paper towel can get confusing. For us, a lot of the soiled paper towel that we saw was only compostable, but our waste hauler has said that if it's under 2% contaminated, it can be recycled. For the purpose of our data collection, we label it as compostable because most of it was not recyclable. So the first graph on the top left here is how much we are recycling in our entire facility. Again, this is not including our warehouse recycling program. So that's 9.33%. What we should be recycling, or can be recycling, is 28.53% on the top right here. That's a huge increase. On the bottom here, if we add a compost program, another 40% is diverted from landfill. So that's definitely something we need to consider. So in our facility, there's 4 major zones: warehouse, office, lunch and coffee room, and washrooms. We made these zones based on the type of waste that shows up in these areas. So everything in office has similar waste, etc. So first, let's take a look at our lunch and coffee rooms, 24% of our facility waste. There's mostly compostable waste, soiled paper towel, food scraps, and coffee grounds, and a little bit of recyclable as well, as you'd expect. Most of this stuff should be getting recycled. This is the only place in the facility that we can recycle aluminum cans, PET number 1, gable top containers, and coffee cups and lids. But we're only seeing about 9% of the aluminum cans in the facility in this waste, 11% of PET containers, 82% of gable top containers, 21.6% of coffee cups and lids. So people are bringing them out of the cafeteria and lunchrooms and throwing them in the waste somewhere else where they won't be recycled. That's something we need to tackle. None of the waste in the lunch and coffee room is being recycled. That's not to say we don't have a recycling program. We just do not meet the acceptance criteria. Of that waste, about 5% is recyclable, and another whopping 90% can be composted. So this is a quick look at our cafeteria waste program. Less than 5% contamination is required for it to be recycled. Our contamination level is 92.5%, which is insane. As you can see, there's a lot of bins there, and almost none of them are labeled. It gets really confusing for everybody. That's definitely something that we need to work on. Now let's take a look at our office waste, about 29%. Mostly fine paper. 29% food scraps, which is interesting. People must be eating at their desks. And I also, PET number 1 and coffee cup lids, that's recycling that we don't have in the office. People eating at their desks is causing a lot of waste that is not getting recycled because they're throwing it away at their desks. This is a look at the percentage of recyclable material actually getting recycled from our different workstations in the office. As you can see, admin, HR, and reception are recycling 96% of the recyclable material, whereas auto and security is only reaching 63.5%, and warehouse is at 0%. So we want to get all of these up to 100% recyclable material. Now let's take a quick look at our washrooms, about 11% of our waste. There's a surprising amount of food-related material in the washrooms. 38% of food packaging, 3% food scraps, PET containers, coffee cups, which we had no idea would be there. We thought it would all be soiled paper towel. It does make a big portion of it, but not what we expected. Now let's take a quick look at our warehouse, about 34% of our waste, audited waste. 34.26% is wax label backs. Again, this cannot be recycled. Everything you see here in blue, wood, plastic, shrink wrap, corrugated cardboard, fine paper, etc. This is stuff that has a recycling program in the warehouse but is not being recycled because we did not look at any of the recycling programs in our warehouse. And this purple stuff is stuff that can be recycled elsewhere in the facility. So there's a lot of stuff in here that we're missing out on our current recycling programs. Next steps. I'm going to pass you guys back to Jim, and he can talk about our next steps.
Thanks, Cody. So basically our next steps are to engage the employees by creating an employee questionnaire, and who better to find out about the waste, mainly from the people who are creating the waste or producing it. So how much do the employees know about the waste programs? What are they currently doing with their waste? What improvements can be made? Waste program, we need to revamp it and re-educate everyone, and that goes from the custodial staff to everybody in the building and even our visitors. How can we ensure that all recyclables are recycled? We have to find that out. investigate options for compost and organics, ensure our bins are placed in optimal locations and be consistent throughout the facility, and continuously reevaluate and improve, and stay committed to our goals. Our impressions and experience during and after the waste audit, some of the results were a little bit surprising. As Cody mentioned, there were a little bit of food waste in the washrooms, for example, the amount of compostable waste in the office areas, and things that were not considered before now must be. Where should associates put their gloves and plastic caps? Should there be mixed recycling in office areas? The waste audit was informative and gave us data that we can use to improve our facility and reach our target goal, and help engage our staff and others in how to achieve this goal as well. The bag sort was fun and interesting, and overall a positive experience, and we're eager to put that data to work for us. We also wanted to thank Jessica from Working Knowledge and partners from Project Green.
Thank you so much, Jim. That was a really great presentation. We are going to go right into a Q&A very quickly, but before we do, I just wanted to pass it over again to Melissa Bai, who's the Waste Project Manager here at Partners in Project Green.
Thank you. Well, I'll be really brief because we do want to make sure that we have time for your questions. And essentially how we connected with Bosch on this is as a result of our material exchange program. So if you do have any waste challenges whatsoever, please do get in touch with us. As you can see, we have a multi-step process here to help you out. At the end of the day, what it is, it's hand-on support. We will go to your facility, help assess the materials that you're facing challenges with. We'll, at that point, go out into the market, identify the solutions for you, and lastly, we'll stay on to help facilitate those exchanges, set up the meetings, help with communication, essentially stay on every step of the way to ensure that it's a smooth process and that you can solve your challenges. We also do run an online exchange platform. So again, if there's any material that you're concerned about, you can go to this website right here, our website /wasteinfo. That'll ask you a few basic questions and we'll get in touch with you, or you can just get in touch with us directly. Just to give you an example, here are just a small sample of some of the material exchanges that we've done working with companies like Chrysler and Velcro and the Toronto Zoo. That's just a brief overview, and I'll skip through these slides just because we're short on time and just leave you with my final thoughts. So actually let me just address that. We are working on releasing to you a lot of the tools that were used by Bosch and were developed by Jessica that will really give you the step-by-step instructions very concisely on how to look at the pre-audit, during the audit and post-audit activities, as well as provide you with that worksheet that Jessica and Cody mentioned, literally an area where you can just plug in numbers and it can provide you with that very relevant information. We do want to thank Jessica very kindly for her support, and just so you know, as webinar attendees, you are going to get access to all of this information, whether you're members or not. Although these are going to be member-only resources, we're going to share them with everybody who's attended the webinar. My final thought is just to let you know what we do here is we provide hands-on support, expert knowledge and resources. We understand the challenges very well that you're going through, and we can help identify the solutions. We know where they are in the marketplace, and we will research them and help you manage communications. At the end of the day, what we do is we save you time, and we make it easier for you to access and implement better waste solutions. At this point, I'm going to pass it over to Alex, who will now moderate the question and answer period. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Malaz. And I'll open it up to Jessica as well here. And if you can unmute yourself there, Jessica. And we have everyone here in the room. Can you hear us okay? Yeah? Are you there, Jessica?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. Any other questions? I don't really have anything right here yet. Anything you want to cover, Malaz?
Sure. So maybe a quick question to you, Jessica, is, how do you find the companies, when you do your external and environmental audits, how do you find companies who do internal audits perform versus companies who just go externally?
Okay, so how do they perform and how will they conduct an audit, or how is their environmental performance?
No, I mean, how do they generally perform results-wise versus companies who don't do internal audits?
Okay, that's great. So I would say, and this I'm hoping this will answer your question, because there was one best practice I wanted to describe where you use internal and external auditors. And basically what you do is you'll want to put together sort of an audit program where an internal audit will have access to materials on a regular basis, and I mean waste that's being generated. So in an internal audit, you know, they have the ability to continually monitor and measure materials, better than the hauler, better than even a once-a-year waste audit. And as an example, let's say they want to get a good handle on recyclables, contamination, quantities, and so on. That information is like next to impossible to get from a service provider with any actual reliability, but a great way to get it is through an internal audit. Having that happen through the external audit, that's a tricky one to try to get all the highs and lows that can happen throughout a year. So think about something like recycling, you know, pop cans. You would assume that in the summer it's going to be a higher quantity because people probably drink more pop, and in the winter they're probably drinking more coffee. Who knows? So I would say that a combination of both is a best practice. But as far as companies that conduct internal audits tend to be more engaged and have a better handle on their wastes in general.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jessica.
And if you'll allow me, Alex, I've got a question for Jim. You know, quite often we think that our, you know, recycling or diversion numbers need to be improved by better handling our materials. And what we found often is that by having better engagement and education for staff and dealing with the issues of contamination are some of the most effective ways to actually increase your diversion. Just wanted to get, you know, Jim's thoughts on that, about how much does employee engagement and dealing with contamination, you know, how much will it impact Bosch's efforts and the results that they hope to achieve?
Well, as I think it's crucial that the engagement's there. All the employees need to be on board, as well as custodial staff and even visitors to our facility need to understand our recycling program, even just walking into the door. So we need to make it easy, informative, and you'd be surprised how many people come up to me and ask me what are the results of the audit that we performed, just kind of in a sidebar conversation in the hallway or whatever. So employees are thinking about it, they are talking about it. It's just sometimes, you know, there needs to be that engagement to get everybody involved.
Great, thank you so much, Jim. And I just want to quickly thank you and Jessica for coming out and participating in this webinar. You are a great example to how businesses can really tackle on an internal waste audit to really drive a most effective diversion rate. So if you have any questions, you can reach us, Malaz or myself. Again, we do apologize for the technical glitch earlier on in the afternoon, but we'll be in touch with the webinar recording as well as the upcoming resources. So again, if you have any questions, contact us. And thanks again for coming out today. Bye now.